Please welcome Zack Bodner, President and CEO of the Oshman Family JCC.
Good morning, and welcome to Z3 2025. Yeah. This is by far our largest Z3 conference ever. 1,500 people are here with us on this campus today. 1,500. Not all in this room. The fire marshal doesn't have to worry. We have 800 here in this room. We've got another group out there in the Cultural Arts Hall. And guess what? We have 300 teens on the first ever Z3 Teen Summit. Take a look. We got Z3 teens out there. There they are. 300 of them. We've got folks watching from around the world, zooming in. Our friends at the San Francisco JCC have a watch party. And despite this many people here, there's still some that weren't able to make it. Some of our speakers got caught in the whole federal shutdown. So the schedule is going to change a little bit today, but it's still going to be an incredible day. It's not as bad as the year that the food truck got stolen. Remember that? That really happened, for those of you who didn't know that. You got food today. Thank you, Guy and Wendy. But it's going to be an incredible experience today. I'm just really thrilled. And look, it couldn't happen but for an army of individuals. There are so many volunteers that come here every single day for weeks leading up to this. So many staff that work on this. I can't possibly thank everyone who's been involved, but there are a handful of folks that I want to thank. I want to thank the Coombe and Arcadia Foundations. Thank you for all that you do, your support year after year. To the Toby, Libitsky, and Fuchsman Family Foundations, thank you for what you do as well, really. To the Saul and Leslie families, to the Diane and Weingarten families, and to the Troper family, thank you guys, really. We have so much generous support from so many members in our community. They're listed in the program. Please take a look. Organizations come out to sponsor and to partner with us. This year, the Jewish National Fund, JNF, came through in a big way for us. Thank you to the JNF. Yeah. The JCC Association of North America is here, including my friend Barak Herman, the president and CEO. Thank you to the JCC Association. To the J Weekly, our media sponsor, as well as to the Federation of the Bay Area and Jewish Silicon Valley. Thank you guys for all that you do. Really, thank you. Finally, to our board of directors led by Adam Tackner, thank you for trusting us, having our backs, investing in us, and allowing us to grow to 8 Z3 conferences around the country this year. Thank you. Now, listen, when Ronit Jacobs and I had this conversation 11, 12 years ago and said, let's have a little get-together to talk about Israel, let's call it Zionism 3.0, we had no idea that 11 years later it would turn into this. But in many ways, this is because of the visionary leadership of Rabbi Amitai Fraiman. So thank you, Amitai, for growing this thing. Okay, friends, can we just acknowledge it? Can we say that they're home? They are home. They're home. I know they're not all home yet. We got some good news this morning. There's still 4 bodies that we have to lobby for and pray for. Every day we need their return. And yet all the living hostages are home. And that we have to celebrate. Because 2 years ago on this stage, we had families of hostages that pleaded with us to help. Last year on the stage, there were still 100 hostages. And today, all the living hostages are home. And that is something we need to celebrate. Yeah. And we have to be able to hold both in our hands at the same time. The joy of their return and the pain, because we are the people of Elu ve'elu. Right? Elu ve'elu. Both these truths can be realities at the same time. We can hold complexities in our heart. We understand nuance. We are the people that smash a glass at a joyful wedding. Right? We praise God with the Kaddish at a funeral. We mourn, we weep, we cry, and we worry that in every generation they rise up to destroy us. But we also celebrate, we dance, we sing Habaita, and we know that in every generation we will rise up a new generation of Maccabees to stand with us and be strong and be proud. We are that people, the Elu ve'elu people. Now listen, yeah. For 2 years, for 2 long years, we screamed from the rooftops, bring them home. Imagine that we are now here finally at this moment. This took the whole Jewish community. This was a whole mishpacha effort, as you like to hear me say. This was diaspora Jewry and Israeli Jewry coming together and not stopping, not once, for 2 years. In Israel, the IDF was fighting every single day, fighting in Gaza to bring them home. Regular Israelis were protesting in the streets every single day to bring them home. Israelis were volunteering to help soldiers, feed soldiers, bereaved families, rebuild communities. Israelis were traveling around the globe to lobby world leaders to bring them home. Meanwhile, in the diaspora, we were doing our part. We were wearing the pins. We were wearing the dog tags. We were wearing the T-shirts and the bracelets. We were doing everything we could here to bring them home. Our kids were standing up on campuses, facing down hatred, saying we need to bring them home. Yeah, they deserve a lot of support and credit and thanks. Rabbis were giving sermons, and we raised a lot of money. The American Jewish community raised more money than we'd ever had for a single cause. $1 billion our community raised to bring them home. And we did this all in the face of an onslaught of terrible anti-Semitism, right? The anti-Semitism that we faced in classrooms, in the boardrooms, in newspaper op-eds, and social media. The things that we saw in international soccer matches, in Eurovision, international tennis matches. The things that we saw in Hollywood award shows, in literary circles. And yet, our people stood strong. And on October 13th, 2025, we saw them come home. And that is something we need to celebrate. Folks, I watched this and participated like you did over the last 2 years, and I came away with 5 lessons. What I want to do today is I want to share with you the 5 lessons that I learned over the course of these last 2 years. Number 1, when we come together, we can do anything. When we come together, we can achieve true greatness. When the diaspora and Israel come together, when political right and political left comes together, when the religious and the secular come together, we can achieve greatness. You know, the rabbis talk about how in the 1st century CE, the temple was destroyed. Our people were dispersed for 2,000 years because of our inner disagreement, our inner mistrust, our infighting between ourselves was what brought this about. But we also have the story of Esther. Remember the story of Queen Esther. When she knew she had to go to the king and plead the case, she had to tell him that Haman wanted to destroy our people. And she went to our people and she said, I need you behind me. I need your spiritual and emotional support. I need the whole community together. I need you to fast with me. And remember what Mordecai said. Mordecai came to her and he said, listen, our deliverance will come. The Jews will be saved with or without you. But if you don't step up in this moment, you and your father's house will perish. Mordecai said to her at that moment, don't be irrelevant. And I'm looking out at you at this moment in time saying you were the ones who showed up. You showed you are not irrelevant, but our fight is just getting started, folks. Let's fill this room with twice as many people next year because we are just getting started and we can do it all together. That's the first lesson I took away. The second lesson, which is almost a corollary, is that we can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. The IDF is the strongest army for 1,000 miles. Jews in America have reached the highest echelons of power, and yet we still needed the help of the American president. We still needed the help of Arab countries to bring them home. We have to have allies and friendships out there, and I know it's hard. And I know especially in this moment, there's sometimes this instinct to shtetlize ourselves, to ghettoize ourselves. I've been there. I felt it. After October 7th, I felt this utter betrayal from many of my non-Jewish friends. I wrote them personal letters. I said, would you hide me? My own kids were canceled from their school clubs and affinity groups. They've been iced out by best friends. I know that we feel betrayed. Do you know the story of Sarah Bahat? Sarah Bahat is this incredible Jewish woman, the CEO of the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco, a secular, non-Jewish arts program that was bringing incredible art to the whole city, incredible culture. After October 7th, the barrage of hate and anti-Semitism that she faced, people were trying to force her to fire all the Zionists off her board. They were trying to force her to join a boycott of Israel. They were trying to force her to put up anti-Semitic art in the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. She said she no longer felt safe in her own space. Now, can you imagine if any other ally had said, I don't feel safe in my space? We'd all come and said, that's not okay. That's not okay. Nobody should feel unsafe. But no one came to her aid, and she was forced to resign because she wouldn't go along with what they wanted her to do. That's bravery and that's courage. But it also leads us to want to sometimes shtetilize ourselves, and we can't do it. We cannot do it. That's why I'm so proud of the work that our grassroots activists are doing every single day. These folks in our community have risen up since October 7th, working in some of the most difficult environments. I'm talking about Oded Shekel and Lori Myers and Sarit Honigstein and Karen Orr and Gilia Halom and Susan Saul and Guy Miaz. These are incredible, incredible grassroots leaders. And they know they can't do it alone. They're building friendships and alliances with the non-Jewish community because no man is an island, as they say. And that was an important lesson for me in these last 2 years. My third lesson, I learned what our superpower was. Our superpower as a people is our resilience, our pride, and our joy. We are the people who keep on keeping on. You know, every year they do this happiness index, this World Happiness Index. The 2025 World Happiness Study has ranked Israel as the 8th happiest place on earth. Israel, by the way, 2 years of war, and they're the 8th happiest. Guess where the United States is? The U.S. is 24th on the list. And the researchers are scratching their heads. They don't get it. But if you know, you know. And we know. Right? Like Israelis, despite what they've been facing, and there is suffering, there is pain, we know that, but they find a way to celebrate. The simchas, the mitzvahs, the weddings. They know that our people choose life. We raise a glass, we say l'chaim, to life. We don't toast to a healthy life, to a good life, to a long life, to a happy life. It's just life itself that's sacred. And that's why these stories of these hostages who come out and they've maintained their faith in humanity are so inspiring. Like the story of Omer Shem Tov, 19-year-old kid, stolen away from Nova, brought to the worst dungeons under Gaza, living in hell for 2 years. This young kid, somehow he came upon a little prayer card in Hebrew in the darkest moments. And on this prayer card was a prayer calling for him to have faith in God. And he remembered this was the same prayer that his mother used to say to him every night when he was a kid. And he didn't believe in the serendipity of that there are no coincidences. He held on to this. This is what kept him alive and helped him get through this moment. And he said, when he came out and he was telling a story, he said, after you've experienced true darkness, you can experience true life. That is our superpower. Lesson number 4. Folks, the haters are always going to be out there. The haters are always going to be coming after us. But let's not make fighting them our raison d'etre. That's not what we're about. It's not about becoming anti-Zionists, anti-Semites. It's about Jewish pride. It's about helping this next generation understand what it's all about. And it's about not letting them define us. We need to define ourselves. We need to define our own agenda. You know, I'm on the advisory board of this group of individuals who are trying to rethink how Israel needs to be brought into Jewish education post-October 7th. My friend David Breifman brought me into this group. We had a call last week, and one of the topics of conversation was whether Zionism should be part of the curriculum. Now, don't worry, unequivocally the group was like, of course, yes, Zionism has to be a part of this curriculum. But the fact that we're even asking the question means that somehow our adversaries have gotten into our heads. Why would we let anyone else define our own terminology, our own heritage, our own identity, much less our adversaries? We get to define the agenda. We get to define the terms. That's what it means to be a Zionist today. Okay? Zionism, the old terminology of Zionism, and it still exists for today. The basic definition of Zionism is to believe that Jews have a right to our own state and our own homeland at its most basic level. Now, if you believe that everybody in the world, all peoples, deserve a state, Russians and Ukrainians and Germans and French and American and Pakistanis and Saudis and Palestinians, everybody deserves a state except for the Jews? Only the Jews should be treated differently? Well, we have a word for that. But Zionism today doesn't just mean Jews have a right to our own state. Zionism today means auto-emancipation. It means self-sovereignty. It means we have control over our own destiny. We're no longer the victims of history, but the definers of it. So when somebody is an anti-Zionist today, it means they're anti-Jewish sovereignty. It means their anti-Jewish identity that is not tied to being a downtrodden, victimized minority beholden to some benevolent majority. And to fight back against those haters, we have to create proud Jews. That's our job, to create the Jews of the future. I think we have to be creating the alt-new Jew. For those of you who get that reference, it's to Herzl's Alt-New Land, his book. We have to create the alt-new Jew. The Jew of the future takes the best the best of the Israeli Jewish traits right now, their courage, their chutzpah, their bravery. What Israelis are doing, showing up every single day. This is the greatest generation. We have to take those strengths and those characteristics, we have to marry them with the strengths of the North American Jew. Our ability to be a strong minority within a majority culture. To be the sechel, the common sense, the ability for us to embrace pluralism and diversity. We have to marry these two and build the Jew of the future, the alt-new Jew. That is the fourth lesson that I came away with. And the fifth lesson is that we must always remember our why. We have to remember our why. That's the theme of this conference. That's why we're here today. Hirsch Goldberg Poland of blessed memory. You'll see his parents later today. Hirsch was an inspiration, a light to the people, especially the hostages he was with, the beautiful six, as his mother liked to call them. And he used to say, to inspire people, he used to say, if you have the why, you'll find the how. It was a paraphrasing of Viktor Frankl's famous line. Folks, I believe we have our why. I believe I know why the Jewish people have been put on this earth. We have a purpose. We have been put here to be a light unto the nations and to fix the brokenness in this world. I have this sense, for me, it's what helps define the meaning of life. Now, maybe you didn't come to the OFJCC on a Sunday afternoon to hear the meaning of life, but you're welcome. For me, it's the meaning of life. Here's how I know that this is what it's all about. The Kabbalists, the ancient Jewish mystics, they used to talk about before the universe existed, it was just God. And God is experiencing pure joy. God is experiencing nirvana, bliss. The meaning of life is for us to experience that joy and to help others experience that joy. God is up there and says, I want to share this joy with other living creatures, and decides to create the universe, but there's no space because it's only God. God is taking up all the space, so God has to contract part of God's self. Think about it like you get into a crowded elevator and you kind of suck in your gut, right? In that space, they call that tzimtzum, that act of contracting part of oneself. God creates the universe, but there's no vessel that's strong enough to hold divine light, so the vessel shatters. The world is created broken, explosion, big bang. And now, we have to go out there and find the broken pieces of this vessel. We have to collect the divine light. Our job, the tikkun olam, the real tikkun olam, what it really means is repairing the brokenness of this world, of finding these pieces, putting them back together, helping others in this world experience joy and experiencing life. And that's the l'chaim. That is our why. If we can recognize that why, we can deal with any how. Let me end with a quick story. A couple weeks ago, I was with my family in New York visiting my oldest daughter, Talia, for Parents' Weekend at college. We were supposed to fly back on Sunday so my little one, Orly, could be back at school at Hausner, and we found out that Omer Adam was singing at Madison Square Gardens on Sunday night. And we're like, we got to be there. I mean, this is Omer Adam, an Israeli rock star. I don't know any of his songs but the one that we all know because it's sung at every single B mitzvah, right? Tel Aviv, Ya Habibi, Tel Aviv. You know the song. It'll be in your head throughout the rest of the day now. You're welcome. I don't know any of those songs. They're all in Hebrew, but it didn't matter. My kids know them. My kids go to Jewish day school at Hausner. They go to Jewish summer camp at Ramah. They're involved with BBYO and Young Judea. They know this stuff. And we're like, we got to be there. I knew that we just had to show up. We changed our flight. We changed our plans. We made sure we're there. Walk into Madison Square Garden, and it's packed. 20,000 people. Old, young, Israeli, non-Israeli. Little kids with those earmuffs on their ears. And the people did not sit down for 2 hours. They're singing and they're dancing and they're waving Israeli flags. There's images of IDF soldiers on the screens, images of hostages reuniting with their families. And I got chills because this was a celebration of life. And in that moment, I had a revelation. I really did. It came over me like a wave of relief. And I realized, we're going to be okay. Our people are going to be okay. Because the folks in this room, they know the why. These singing, dancing, flag-waving Israeli and American Jews, some knew Hebrew, some didn't, they know that the why is about life and joy. And I realized we're going to be okay. Folks, we're here today to talk about the why and to talk about the how. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this discussion, and let's get to it.
Please welcome Consul General of Israel to the Pacific Northwest, Marco Sermonetta.
Thank you so much. As Zack insinuated, may I just say Shechianu, and hopefully do it without croaking. Lieutenant Hadar Golden, killed in action by Hamas during Operation Protective Edge 11 years ago, and abducted to Gaza, is finally home. A relief that is added to the relief that we had after the 20 living hostages in the hands of Hamas have also returned home. Those of you who know me know that alongside being an Israeli and a Zionist, I'm also a diaspora Jew. Always, always proud of that and my family history, and therefore I beg you to relate and to consider my following remarks, taking all of that as background. My dear friends, thank you for inviting me to speak at the 10th Z3 annual conference. It is a privilege to celebrate this important milestone anniversary with you. I'd like, of course, to thank the organizers, first and foremost, OS JCC CEO Zack Bodner. Thank you. Z3 founding director Amitai Fraiman, and of course, the amazing Ronit Jacobs. And she told me to say that. But it is really with deep gratitude that I stand here with, for their long-standing partnership with the Consulate of Israel to the Pacific Northwest, and continuing this tradition of inviting Consuls General of Israel to speak to this amazing gathering. My friends, we gather today in a moment still heavy with sorrow, of course, yet alive with steadfast resolve and hope for a way out of the darkness that has engulfed us for more than 2 years. The shadow of October 7th, a day when horror swept Israel, and the aftermath of which rapidly swept through Jewish communities everywhere, continues to shape our collective experience. It reminds us that open dialogue and close partnership between Israel and the diaspora are not optional, but essential. The atrocities of October 7th did not merely target the Jewish state. They became a license for a broader campaign against Jews everywhere. What began as a savage attack by Palestinian terrorist organization and others against our homeland quickly became an assault on our people wherever they gather to pray, to study, to live. That violence triggered a global surge of anti-Semitism. At the same time, a targeted campaign to minimize, deny, and even trivialize the atrocities committed against Jews in Israel gave legitimacy to the demonization of the state of Israel itself, and in doing so, and eroded the confidence, the security, and even the sense of freedom and equality of Jews around the world. The brutal torture, barbaric sexual assault, and gruesome murder of the terrorists of Hamas and their Palestinian accomplices inflicted deep trauma on the Jewish people. Yet that pain was subsequently amplified by the shocking spectacle of feral jubilation and glorification of these horrific acts against Jews. Particularly painful was that some of those voices came from individuals and groups that Jewish communities, especially in this part of the world, have long considered and supported as allies. This was perhaps the clearest indication to date that while a multiplicity of groups are celebrated as they assert their own identity, only Jews are expected, or rather required, to shed theirs in order to be included. To paraphrase Groucho Marx, Jews, for some reason, keep insisting on joining a club that wouldn't have them as members. This tragedy served as a universal reckoning that reminded us of a familiar, painful truth. The imperative of Jewish safety knows no borders. The wave of anti-Jewish abuse that followed the Simchat Torah massacre proved this was never about just one country in the Middle East. It exposed how fragile Jewish life can be without the protection of sovereignty and the strength of unity. My friends, Zionism was conceived as a bulwark against precisely this vulnerability, a movement for Jewish self-determination, security, equality, and dignity, an act of defiant survival by a people who refuse to be forever wandering. The true decolonization endeavor, the real land-back movement. It sought not only safety, but renewal, a chance to rebuild an ancestral homeland rooted in justice, creativity, and moral responsibility. The only place where Jews could live freely as a people bound by shared memory, values, and vision for generations to come. A place that would serve as home and a source of belonging for every Jewish person wherever they are in the world. Yet since October 7th, we saw concerted, more sophisticated, more insidious campaigns to single out Israel as uniquely evil and to use this as a wedge between it and Jewish communities. The demonization of Israel is no longer just an attempt to undermine its legitimate right to prosecute a war, or worse, to seek to exclude it from its equal place in the family of nations. It has become a campaign to erode Jewish solidarity, to pressure Jews to disavow their connection with their Jewish homeland, to fracture this bond throughout the diaspora and to sow division within our community. And we should not let that happen. Never before has the demand been so clear. Jews must renounce their identity or face marginalization, a tactic that would be unthinkable if directed at any other people. Unfortunately, this rhetoric and this tactic just won an election in New York City, using the language of justice to cloak an old anti-Semitic hatred. It has made Jews across the U.S. feel fear and foreboding, to quote a recent op-ed from Conference of Presidents CEO William Daroff. In the shadow of history's recurring patterns, and on the 87th anniversary of Kristallnacht, one wonders, does this election not feel like the convergence of two stark warnings, the haunting chorus of two lamentations, Amos Elon's sobering chronicle German-Jewish tragedy in the pity of it all, and Philip Roth's cautionary nightmare in the plot against America about how a populist movement fueled by demagoguery can threaten pluralism and unleash old prejudices under democratic banners. Is New York in 2025 a mirror of that earlier moment, nearly a century ago, when Jews trusted too soon that integration and enlightenment meant safety, that social acceptance was lasting, that brilliance in art and science could secure belonging and shield them from harm? Are we witnessing, as Roth forewarned, relearning what was never truly unlearned, that acceptance is always contingent, always fragile, that safety is a delicate illusion, and that with shifting political tides, vulnerability persists despite progress? My friends, Z3 was inspired by the desire to reimagine our peoplehood and strengthen our bonds through the exploration of Zionism and Jewish life today. A space of dialogue where we can together shape and take ownership of our own identity and shared future with courage and purpose. Well, there's never been a better time for that. In the aftermath of October 7th, our call from this hall should be clearer than ever. Stand united, proud, visible, and resolute. Be vigilant and organized. Defend the Jewish state. Defend the Jewish people everywhere. Reject the false narratives that seek to divide us. Recognize that anti-Zionism today serves as a not-so-shiny and surely not respectable veneer under which anti-Semitism hides. Know that to undermine Israel is to undermine Jewish existence and unity. Know that cowering or hiding can only encourage hatred to grow. Know that acts of contrition, apology, or distancing will never win the true, sustained solidarity of groups considered allies. As we mourn the greatest catastrophe that befell our people since the Shoah, as we remember, let us also renew our commitment to each other. Zionism is our promise. The promise that was born in the 19th century as a never at all, but became a lived reality only after never again. Together, steadfast and united, we will ensure that the light of Jewish life never dims. It will continue to burn, shining brighter than ever with our resilience and our unbreakable spirit. Am Yisrael Chai, and thank you very much.
My name is Gal Gilboa Dalal, brother of Guy Gilboa Dalal, who was kidnapped from the Nova Festival.
All I want is to Romy to be free. That's all.
And we'll do everything in our capacity to bring our hostages home.
The Anti-Defamation League is reporting that more than 9,300 incidents for anti-Semitism in the last year.
They ultimately passed a resolution that calls for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Privileged to have the most stunning honor to be Hirsch's mama.
His parents hoping his death is now the fuel needed to help return the remaining 101 hostages.
Thousands of pagers packed with explosives blew up in the hands of Hezbollah operatives.
We have to be very clear-eyed on our failure so we fix it.
I want to say we still have hostages in Gaza and we pray for them and we want them back. So this is our first priority.
26-year-old Sarah Milgram and her boyfriend, Yaron Lashinsky, were both killed last night in D.C.
The Israeli army saying that all of Israel is under fire as Iran fires projectiles.
Demonstrators called on the government to reach an agreement with Hamas to end the war and release the remaining hostages.
Of hostages with their loved ones. Moments we feared would never happen.
Our life is not complete until they will come back.
Hello Z-Free Conference. I started my journey in advocating for my brother Guy's release at your Z-Free Conference in November 23, 3 weeks following the October 7th. I myself am a Nova survivor, and you are the first large audience I spoke to and the first activity in the United States. We launched the mission of my life together with you. Now 2 years later, and 100 of interviews, delegations, sleepless nights, meetings with leaders and crisis later, I stand before you as a different person. My brother Guy is home, and we can finally breathe and live again. I would like to thank you for standing with us, for supporting us, for never leaving our sides. We owe you so much. You know, the only name tag I kept from the last 2 years was from the Z-Free Conference because it had so much meaning for me. I came to the United States so confused, so worried. And you guys were like a second family to me. After speaking to you, after feeling your support, I understand that we're not alone and that you are with us. And your strength gave us strength to keep going. I always imagined Guy coming back home. And when I was at your stage, I came with a shirt with this photo. that Guy is a hostage and he has to be returned. 2 years later, he was still a hostage. But now Guy is home, and I'm proudly wearing this shirt, where you can see Guy is coming home, and it says, Guy is finally home, and our heart is complete again. And I have no words to describe how much I thank you. You mean so much for us. We will never forget it. We stand with you in your challenges combating anti-Semitism, and we love you. Thank you so much from the bottom of our heart. Guy's condition is still challenging, and he has a long road of healing and recovery ahead. We've launched a fundraising campaign to help cover and support Guy's ongoing treatment, and any donation or share would mean so much for us.
Please welcome Rabbi Amitai Fraiman, founding director of the Z3 Project.
That music feels weird after that video, I have to say. So it's been 2 years since we welcomed the family members of the now released hostages. We had Eitan, Robi Gonen's Abba, and Gal, himself a Nova survivor, Guy Gilboa Dalal's brother. We stood here together just weeks after one of the darkest days our people have faced in a generation. We could barely breathe. We stood together in shock, trying to make sense of what had just happened. We invoked our collective rage, our intergenerational trauma, but also our intergenerational hope. We forced ourselves to find the air we needed to navigate our despair. Today, in the 11th year of Z3, we gather again as a community. The war is seemingly over, all living hostages have been freed, and we wait anxiously for the bodies of the 4, thank goodness, remaining hostages to be returned. This year, I want to revisit the idea of breathing, not just as a metaphor, but as something foundational to our people and to this moment. An act of release and of beginning again. 2 years ago, breathing meant remembering to inhale, lifting our heads, strengthening our posture, and searching for hope. Today, I want us to invite us to breathe again, this time to exhale, to steady ourselves, and to imagine what comes next. Yesterday, in synagogues around the world, we read one of the most challenging stories in our canon, the binding of Isaac, Akedat Yitzchak. We all know the story. Avraham, after waiting for so long for a son, is commanded to sacrifice him. And no matter how many times I read it, I still hold my breath throughout the whole thing. The 3-day climb up the mountain, the devastating dialogue between father and son, the heartbreak of the binding itself. As a human being, it challenges me. As a Jew, it unsettles me. And as a father, it breaks my heart. And 4 generations, and to this day, the story continues to perplex people, raising questions about faith and ethics, trust and doubt. But I'm not here to talk about theology. Instead, I want to focus on a single silent moment that's easy to miss. It's the moment right after the angel calls out, "Do not lay a hand on the boy," and just before Avraham lifts his eyes and sees the ram caught in the thicket. In that moment, I'm sure of it, Avraham let out a massive, trembling sigh of relief. He exhaled. After an unbearable ordeal, he could finally breathe again. And the past 2 years have been one excruciating climb up a hill of unending sacrifice. Like Avraham, we didn't choose it. Like him, we bear its marks. But maybe we can now start breathing again. Maybe we can start to exhale. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Sarah did not leave the mountain unscathed, and neither have we. The text tells us that Avraham descends alone. Yitzchak disappears for a while. Sarah, tradition tells us, dies of sorrow. Their family is forever changed. So is ours. And we don't know yet how deeply the marks of these 2 past years are. There's so much loss, so much brokenness, so much to repair. And yet, even with all that pain, the story doesn't end there. Avraham buys land and begins again. Yitzchak later redigs his father's wells, symbolizing a return to the source, to water, to life. And this becomes the blueprint of Jewish history. Tragedy and sacrifice, followed by rebirth and renewal, but never without a price. We carry loss and renewal in the same breath. And that's the true message of the theme this year. Why we persist and how we thrive. It's not about a smooth or sanitized journey. It's about the refusal to give up and the commitment to gather the broken pieces and rebuild. Rebuild for our children and rebuild for our future. That is what we're doing here together. There are more than 1,500 people here, with many more joining from around the world, zooming in. And everyone that's here and watching is committed. They're all convinced that tomorrow can be better than today. Now, you might think it's just a one-day conference, and you might think it happens just here. But last week, there was a Z3 conference in Tucson. In December, there'll be a Z3 conference in San Diego. And in the spring, Miami and Philadelphia, Austin and Cincinnati will also host Z3s. And what began here in Palo Alto has become something shared, a growing network of communities that see themselves as co-creators of our future. And so to make this happen, on Monday and Tuesday, tomorrow and the day after that, there'll be nearly 100 Jewish professionals from more than 25 JCCs across the country to gather for our leadership lab to learn how to implement the magic that's happening here and make a framework and to bring it to their own communities. But it's not only through programs. It's not just conferences and events. Many of our Z3 Institute fellows are here today, shaping the conversation that will carry our thinking forward. So it's also ideas and thought leadership. Benjamin Kirstein's new book, Self-Defense, A Jewish Manifesto, was just published. And Isabella Tabarovsky's book is launching in the next few weeks. This is what it looks like when a community builds together, when we don't just gather, but generate, when we don't just respond, but lead. Because that is what Zionism 3.0 is about. It's not just a conference or a conversation. It's a lens, a paradigm for internalizing sovereignty. It's a way of seeing Jewish life through the assumption of agency, of taking responsibility for our collective story. In the 1880s, Leon Pinsker called on our people to auto-emancipate, to stop waiting for others to grant us dignity and safety, and instead, to claim it ourselves. Zionism 3.0 extends that call into our own time, reminding us that it's our collective responsibility to build the Jewish future together. Now, as we move through this day, learning and laughing, being in community, I want us all to keep in mind and remember that silent moment when Avraham exhaled and began to breathe, and then rebuild. We are not unscathed, but certainly not broken. That is our legacy as a people, to build while we grieve, to plant while the ground still shakes, despite it all, in the face of it all, or as we say, davka, we will persist, we will thrive. Okay, so before we continue, there are a bunch of people I want to thank, because this is clearly not done with one person. I want to start first with thanking Maya Yaniv, my right hand, who really oversees all this, produces this event, and much, much more. Grace Bartel, who works with Maya closely to make it happen. Dol Stein, her genius lies in taking the magic of this day and translating it into a workable framework for other JCCs. Our newest team member, Amy Albertson, who's responsible of magnifying, amplifying, and telling our story. And of course, David Chazoni, who's the head of our institute, who gathered a remarkable group of thinkers and is really giving us the language and the paradigm to move forward and build the future together. On top of our core Z3 team, of course, I also want to thank our development team, especially Michelle and Jessica, who really helped us put this on. Our marketing team, led by Martha and James. The events and setup team, led by the extraordinary Brandy and Lara and Nirit and Gili for the Teen Summit. It's really unbelievable. We have over 300 teens here today. And of course, Kate Taffel and her team, who are making sure this all happens and looks good in the quality of days of our life, as Kate told me. So we're going to continue now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our next part. It's our Bridge Builder Award. It's our second year of awarding someone. We're trying to extend the work outside the JCC, of course, in the JCC walls, and in recognizing bridge builders who really embody everything that we're trying to do. We're building bridges within Jewish communities and between Jewish communities. And I'm really, really excited to introduce the winner of this year's award, Andrew Keene. Andrew Keene is a social entrepreneur and a Jewish community leader based in Tel Aviv. He is the founder of Esek, a social enterprise that supports Israeli small businesses by connecting their stories and products with the global Jewish community. He's originally from Milwaukee. Andrew made Aliyah in December 2023 and has held leadership roles in international Jewish organizations and now focuses his work on strengthening connections between Israel, the Jewish communities around the world. So it's my great, great pleasure to present the Z3 Bridge Builder Award to Andrew Keene.
Thank you so much. It is really a great honor to receive this award and to be here with so many familiar faces. When I think of what Z3 means to me, I think of this three-dimensional Zionism, which for me and for many of us is rooted in a love of Eretz Yisrael, Am Yisrael, and Medinat Yisrael. And if we've learned anything over the last 2 years, let alone 10 before that, it's that love of Israel doesn't come as the reward for a great educational curriculum, as important as those are. It comes from a deep and sincere and authentic relationship with Israel as a real place with real challenges, and with Israelis as real people who we can share so much with. And when I think of what we've done over the last 2 years with Israeli small businesses, the greatest privilege for me has just been to listen to their stories of small businesses across the country who represent the full diversity of Israeli society and whose products represent, in every category, represent the best of Israeli creativity and entrepreneurship and innovation. And when our team sits in their living room or their workshop or their studio and we listen to their stories, we are reminded over and over of the beauty and the complexity of the land of Israel, the miraculous diversity of the people of Israel, and the need for a just and secure and inclusive democratic state of Israel. And when social media or our communities often feel like a lonely place at the moment to love Israel, I am just immensely encouraged by the tens of thousands of people, many of whom are in this room actually, who have shown their support of Israel through the lens of Israeli small businesses, Jewish and non-Jewish, who have chosen to bring a piece of Israel physically as well as the story of a piece of Israeli society home with them. And we've been just thrilled to be able to bring that to people in 52 countries and growing, and it's been just a great privilege to do so. So I'll end where I started, just to say thank you for this incredible honor, and to Rabbi Amitai and his incredible team for bringing 1,500 of us together here in this room and beyond to love Israel and to celebrate Israel for all that it is and all that we hope it can be. So thank you.
Your comedian for today is a frequent guest on The Tonight Show, an actor on Shameless, Disney's Kickin' It, and one of the stars on Netflix, Cobra Kai. Most importantly, he's a loud and proud Zionist. Please welcome Dan Ahdoot.
What's up, what's up, what's up? How's it going, Z3? Keep it going for all of my opening acts. They were not funny. They need a lot of work. That was some of the worst comedy I've ever heard. That's right, I've been on The Tonight Show, I've been on Netflix's Cobra Kai, but this is the highlight of my career, the gym at the JCC at 11 a.m. Yes! Oh, I need a new agent. But this is not just any JCC. This JCC is crazy. This is like a college campus. It's like a JCC on crack. I mean, that's what the C stands for at this one. Yeah, you guys this is nuts here. You guys have like marble floors and old olive trees and Asians. It's amazing here. Okay, I'm glad you laughed at that. I'm glad you like that, dude? All right, young guy. We got a lot of young people here. Give it up for the young people. Thanks for being here. We got a lot of old people here. Give it up for the old people. Yeah. There's a lot of Z1s here, I see. A lot of Z1s. Thank you. Thank you for making it. That's exciting. I'm Iranian. Any Iranians here? One in the back. Hi, Mom. How are you? I'm an Iranian Jew, which is really one of those classic combinations like peanut butter and cat. But my family escaped the Islamic Republic of Iran and moved to the Islamic Republic of New York. So it's going to be a fun 4 years. As an Iranian Jew, though, I have a keen insight. I know that it must be really tough to be Muslim these days, and I'll tell you why. Because I perform all over the country. All 50 states I've done shows. And whenever I get off stage, without fail, someone comes up to me and goes, "Dude, you're not really Jewish, right? You just say that because it would be more dangerous to say you're Muslim, huh?" How much does it suck to be Muslim, where people think that you're faking being a Jew for your safety? That's like the worst witness protection program ever. But I am a proud Jew, and it's tough to see what's going on out in the world with anti-Semitism. Jews are fighting back, though. Jews are getting guns now. Jews are getting guns. Silence. I went to a gun range in LA. It looked like a frickin' Chabad. I put my hand out to shoot. Some guy like wrapped it into fill-in. I was like, what the? Where'd you come from? A lot of Ashkenazis here. I love my Ashkenazi friends. Always, yes, give it up for the Ashkis. Yeah. Yay, sunscreen. Always fun having Ashkenazis over to, when I was a kid. They'd come over to the house and have dinner, my mom's food, and they'd always be confused. They'd be like, what is that taste? It's called flavor. There's life outside of boiled fish, Avi. There's one time of the year you Ashkenazis are very jealous of us. You're very jealous. And what's that time of the year? What is it? Passover, baby, because we can eat rice. We can eat rice. You guys think we have these crazy rice parties where we just get naked and roll around in the rice? And you're right, we do. I once had a threesome with Jasmine and Basmati. It's pretty hot. I did a show a while back, though. This is a true story. I did a show a while back at Cal State Northridge. And yeah, all right, safety school. And apparently there's like a sizable deaf community at Cal State Northridge. So there was someone on stage with me doing sign language to my jokes as I'm doing my jokes. And I get to the part of my routine where I say that I'm a Jew, and I happen to be looking over at the sign language person, and I swear to you, this is what I saw. I was like, whoa, stop the show. This is how you do Jew in sign language. I'm not making this up. Does anyone here know sign language? Probably couldn't hear me even if you did. But this is how they do Jew. So I was like, oh my God, I wonder what the other religions are like. So I say Christian. Mind you, Christians have had their own sign for thousands of years. The good old cross, it's been treating them fine. These guys kick it up a notch. This is how you do Christian. As in, knock, knock, who's there? Jesus, ow. So now I'm like, oh my God, this language, if there's a messed up stereotypical sign for a religion, it's going to be, and I say, Muslim. And I'm expecting this guy to be like, right? She goes, no, for Muslim, you just spell out M-U-S-L-I-M. I was like, what? That's crap. Because if you're going to spell stuff out, Jew takes half the amount of time to spell, but instead they have to go with Shylock, the money-lending Jew, who's like, oh, the rent is due. Oh, the rent is due. And weirdly enough, this is also how you sign the rent is due, which, that's not right. That's not right. I was in Israel 3 years ago. I did a comedy tour in Israel. I did 8 shows in Israel, all over the country, all the way from Tel Aviv to half an hour outside of Tel Aviv. And the day the show was over, I took a direct flight from Tel Aviv to Dubai, did one show in Dubai for 10 minutes, and I got paid 3 times more than all the shows in Israel combined. I love the Abraham Accords. But You know, when I was in Israel, I experienced two things. I experienced racism and I experienced anti-Semitism. And I'm going to tell you about both of them, okay? The racism. Anyone, where are my Israelis at? Anyone from Israel here? Yeah. Okay. So in Israel, they have stereotypes for all the different types of Jews. Like the Yemenites are fiery, the Ashkenazis are smart. Israeli, tell me, what is the stereotype that you have for Persian Jews? Yeah, they're cheap. Thank you. Say it to my face. They're cheap. That's what they say about us. The Jewish people, a people who are falsely maligned by the rest of the world for being cheap, these guys are like, no, we're not all cheap. They're the cheap ones. And it gets worse for me. I am an Iranian Jew from a town called Esfahan. And in the Iranian Jewish community, they have different stereotypes within the Iranian Jews, depending on where you come from. Do you know what the stereotype is of Iranian Jews from Esfahan? We're cheap. I'm like a Russian nesting doll of cheap Jew. And I experienced anti-Semitism in Israel as well. I had a day off, and I was in the old city of Jerusalem, and I was wandering around, and I saw a sign that said Arab Quarter that way. Now, every time I'd gone to Israel before, I was on like a tour, and you know, you're with soldiers, and they say you can go here, you can't go here, but I was alone, and I've been watching a lot of Fauda. So I was like, I'm going to the Arab Quarter. So I start walking through the Arab Quarter, and then I see a sign that says Temple Mount, that way. Now, Jews aren't allowed to go to the Temple Mount, because we're the ones doing the apartheid. You'll get that when you get home. But I was like, I'm going up there. If Doron would do it, I'm going to do it too. So I start walking down this little hallway, okay, and it's like me and a bunch of Muslim guys, and there's like 5 steps, and on top of the steps, there's 4 Israeli soldiers, and behind them is the Temple Mount. So I start walking up the stairs, and one of the Israeli soldiers looks at me and goes, "Hey, etchim elachem benachem." And I was like, "Oh, sorry, I don't speak Hebrew." He goes, "It's closed." I was like, "What do you mean it's closed? Everyone's going up." "No, it's closed for you." I was like, "Why is it closed for me? Only Muslim." "Yeah, I'm Muslim." I was like, "Oh shit, I didn't know there was a quiz." I was like, "I'm Iranian, I don't speak Arabic." He goes, "You're not Muslim." I was like, wow, that's kind of amazing that you knew that. I mean, I'm Iranian, but yeah, I am Jewish. How'd you know that? He goes, "You want to know how I know? Your nose is too big. Go, yalla." I called the ACLU. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Yisrael Chai.
My first year, I made the mistake of trying to follow Zack. Please, let's give a big round of applause for Dan. It could be a heavy day. So it's good to kind of break things up. But we've heard from, we had a little crying, a little laughing. Now we're going to start shifting gears into the program a little bit more in terms of the other emotional and intellectual pieces. So I'm really, really excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Sarah Hurwitz. Sarah Hurwitz is the author of As a Jew, Reclaiming Our Story from Those Who Shame, Blame, and Try to Erase Us, which is a New York Times bestseller and won the Natan Notable Book Award. And Here All Along, Finding Meaning, Spirituality, and a Deeper Connection to Life in Judaism, after finally choosing to look there. She served as a senior speechwriter for President Barack Obama, as chief speechwriter for First Lady Michelle Obama, and as chief speechwriter for Hillary Clinton on her 2008 presidential campaign. Sarah is a graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Law School, and has completed training to be a chaplain, which she does on a volunteer basis at a hospital near her home. Her book can be purchased outside. I really highly recommend you get it. It's a really great read. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Sarah Hurwitz.
Thank you so much, Amitai, and thank you to everyone at Z3 for everything you've done to just plan this extraordinary event. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here today. So, a few years ago, I was reading an article about an American Supreme Court case, which was deciding whether it was constitutional for a high school football coach to lead Christian prayers with his students on the field at a public high school. Now, the court sided with the coach. And as I imagined this coach holding these public prayer sessions, I thought about how a Jewish football player might feel having to stand off to the side as his... Give it a minute. All right, how's that? We're better? Okay, great. So, okay, we're on the field, we're praying, and I thought about how a Jewish football player might feel having to stand off to the side as his classmates all prayed to Jesus. I thought about how different and uncomfortable he might feel. And I thought to myself, good. And then I thought, no, that is not good at all. That's awful. I don't want some Jewish kid to feel like a guest at his own school, nor do I want a Muslim or a Hindu or an atheist kid to feel that way. I totally disagree with this Supreme Court case. But still, a part of me thinks, good. And the reason I think that is because to be a Jew is to be different. And to be different is to be uncomfortable. And that is okay, because comfort is not the Jewish mission in the world. You know, for many years, Jews here in America have focused a great deal on being comfortable, on fitting in. That was certainly my own story. For most of my life, I went around telling people, I'm Jewish, but not that Jewish. I just like Seinfeld, and I'm kind of anxious. Or, social justice is my Judaism. There's nothing wrong with that, right? We're all cool with social justice, right? What I think I was saying was, don't worry, I'm just like you. I just go to a different church. But I don't even go to my church, and I know that you don't go to your church either. So really, we're the same. We're worldly, progressive, spiritual, but not religious. Now, I was lucky enough to grow up in a part of America without much anti-Semitism. So for most of my life, I could get away with that kind of contentless Jewish identity that was little more than an empty void with a few ethnic jokes rattling around in it. For most of my life, I could be just like everyone else, but with a fun little ethnic twist. And for those of you who grew up in Israel, fitting in meant living by a Jewish calendar, in a Jewish language, learning Jewish history and texts in your public school. So whether you were secular or religious, being a Jew did not exactly make you different. But today, here in America, on our campuses, in our companies and organizations, and even on our streets, we find ourselves singled out for being Jews or Zionists. And that empty void Jewish identity, it's no longer enough. Now, I want to be clear that I think the anti-Semitism we're facing is abhorrent and terrifying and evil, and I wish with every fiber of my being that it would disappear. But I actually don't think it's the worst thing in the world, that it's harder for us to fit in and be like everyone else. As painful as it can be, I think this is an opportunity, not just for Jews, but for the world. Because I think the world needs our difference. And embracing our difference and bringing that difference to the world, that is uncomfortable. It always has been. Bringing monotheism to the world, the idea that there's a moral order to the universe, that every human being is created in the divine image, infinitely worthy and precious, the very idea that is the basis for democracy, human rights, and Western thought itself, that was not comfortable. The people around us were not thrilled when we rejected the idea that might makes right and refused their gods for our own. Kings and pharaohs were not thrilled when we refused to worship kings and pharaohs and instead turned our attentions to orphans, widows, strangers, and the poor. People who insisted that their faith was the only true way, they didn't like it when we refused to abandon our God, our story, and each other, when we insisted on our difference. All of that was uncomfortable. And today, more than ever before, the world needs our difference. When it comes to so many of the challenges we face, Jewish tradition offers wisdom that we desperately need. And not just Jews, all of us. At a time when our public conversation, particularly on social media, is so stupid and polarized, filled with people claiming that they have the one truth and everyone else is evil and wrong, Jewish tradition demands that we hold and wrestle with opposing truths. The Torah tells us to love the stranger, the non-Jew, to welcome the stranger. But it also tells us to remember Amalek. Remember the Amalekites, the tribe that attacked the Israelites when they were weak. So love the stranger, but remember that some strangers want to kill you. Be open-hearted, but don't be naive. We have to hold both of these truths and wrestle with them. We live at a time when our society tells us that some of the most fundamental aspects of human existence, aging, grief, illness, death, are to be avoided at all costs. That hospitals are creepy, mourners make us uncomfortable, dead bodies are gross. We have an instinct to run from such people and places. Best to just send flowers, maybe a text. But Jewish tradition says, no, you run right to them. You get yourself to that hospital bedside, to that shiva. In those liminal moments, when those thin spaces, when the boundaries between life and death, heaven and earth thin out, and when people are the most lost and disoriented, we're told to accompany them, to hold them in loving community. At a time when it's trendy to divide people up into crude, dehumanizing categories, oppressor, oppressed, powerful, powerless, and to love or hate them accordingly, Jewish law says just the opposite. Our ancient rabbis present us with endless, hyper-specific scenarios. What do we do about this person with this need in this circumstance at this time? What if you've loaned someone money and you know they can't afford to pay you back, and you happen to see them coming down the street towards you a few weeks later? What should you do? Well, according to Jewish tradition, you should turn around and walk the other way. You should try to avoid running into that person, because to do so would embarrass them. It would remind them of their debt to you. Why such specific guidance? Why can't we just say, help the poor, and leave it at that? It's because with each specific example, Jewish law is urging us to develop an exquisite sensitivity to the needs and vulnerabilities and dignity of this person before us. It's like going to the eye doctor when they click that little vision machine to make your vision finer and finer. That's Jewish moral vision. It means really seeing this person before us, understanding that they are not a category or a label, they are an entire world, and we need to treat them accordingly. Jewish tradition calls on us to reject the narcissism and hyper-individualism of modern society. It's not just about you do you, but about we do we. It's not just about finding ourselves, but about finding each other, going beyond self-care to self-restraint and self-sacrifice and self-transcendence. This isn't easy, and it's not comfortable, but comfort is not the Jewish mission in the world. Building a society that is the exact opposite of ancient Egypt, a society where every single person is treated as an image of the divine, that is the Jewish mission in the world. And our sacred texts are filled with stories of our ancestors learning to embrace this discomfort. We're told that the ancient Israelites accepted that covenant with God at Mount Sinai by saying, we will do and we will hear. The doing, the leap of action, as Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel called it, that came first. The Israelites joined this partnership with God and took on this massive list of responsibilities before they even understood what that meant. Wasn't comfortable. This is this discomfort of Nachshon, who, according to our rabbis, stood with the Israelites at the edge of the sea with the Egyptians closing in. And while Moses pled with God to split the sea, Nachshon didn't wait for divine intervention, just plunged right in. And only when he was nearly in over his head did God intervene to part the waters. Near drowning, not comfortable. And I have to tell you, I have seen this same courage and determination today from Jews all across the globe. I've seen it in the college students I've met as I've visited nearly 30 campuses across America. There was the young woman who told me that she runs a campus dance troupe, and one of the dancers quit and tweeted, and I quote, "Just quit my Zionist-led dance group." But this young woman retorted, "Please," as if I was making them dance to Hatikva. And then there was the young man who, after recounting all of the abuse he'd gotten from his classmates, said, "And you know what I'm gonna do?" Now, his tone made me a little nervous, so I asked, what are you going to do? And he replied, "I am going to be the loudest, proudest Jewish Jew they have ever seen." And then there was the solidarity trip I did just a few months after October 7th. Now, I expected that the Israelis that we met would be traumatized. I assumed that they would be grieving and heartbroken, and they were. What I didn't expect was that they would be funny, but they were. There was the young man who lost his brother in a massacre at their kibbutz, who told us that he was heading to the US for a speaking tour. "I hope," he said, "to convince Americans to be only as anti-Semitic as absolutely necessary." There was the disaster relief expert who briefed us on his work, and when someone mentioned anti-Semitism on campus at Berkeley, he replied, "Yes, Berkeley, another kind of disaster area." And then there was a soldier I spoke to who, after I described the agenda of our trip, visits with attack survivors, IDF widows, hostage families, he replied, "Ah, so you are on sad birthright." I felt like each of them was telling us, we are not going to drown in our trauma and our grief, and you all better not either. Finally, I have seen people of all ages and all Jewish backgrounds showing up to services and classes, to lectures and events, determined to learn more about our story, our tradition, our history. And by the way, I think actually that's the best way to fight anti-Semitism. Because if you have a contentless, empty, void Jewish identity, and someone tells you that Judaism is violent and vengeful with an angry, unloving God, what are you going to say? I like Seinfeld? If they tell you that Israel is a racist, colonialist state, and you don't know anything about Jewish history or Israel, how will you respond? Tikkun olam? If we want to fight against anti-Semitism, we need to know what we're fighting for. We need to know our story. And we need to remember not just who we are, but what we are. We are not just a religion, nor are we a race or an ethnicity. Jews are of all different races and ethnicities. We are something so much older and so much more enduring. We are a tribe, a civilization, a nation, a peoplehood, but most of all, a family. And when we saw Guy and Evyatar embracing each other, we saw our brothers reunited. When we lost Rachel and John's son and so many other sons and daughters, those were our kids. When we hear Eli Sharabi's breathtaking story of survival, we recognize that as a family story. It's the story of so many of our ancestors. Now, that Supreme Court case about the football coach, I think that case is wrong, and you will never convince me otherwise. But I also think that it is not the worst thing in the world to be a young Jew standing separate at the 50-yard line who says, "I'm different. This is not how I pray, and I don't have to impose my way on anyone else, because my tradition is big enough to hold both my difference and everyone else's. And I can stand here, uncomfortable, but fully at home in something so much bigger, knowing who I am and from whom I descend, knowing the story and mission of my people, and knowing that it's my story, my mission too. And maybe that Jewish kid will inspire others to stand up and embrace their difference as well, because we are not the only ones with unique moral wisdom to offer the world. So many others have their wisdom, their moral vision, and we need their difference too. So feeling left out, feeling different, it's not the worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world would be to forget who we are. The worst thing in the world would be for us to stop telling our story. So let's learn and embrace our story. Let's honor our ancestors who held fast to that story generation after generation and sacrificed so much to hand it down to us. Let's be proud, passionate, learned Jews, Jews who are different, Jews who are uncomfortable, and Jews who work every day to fulfill our mission in the world. Thank you.
Please welcome Tamar Ish-Shalom and Ambassador Dan Shapiro.
Shalom. I want to say good morning, but nearly good afternoon. Shalom, Dan.
Shalom, Tamar.
As the Polish poet Wisława Szymborska once wrote, after every war, someone has to clean up. Things won't straighten themselves up after all. Photogenic, it's not, and takes time. All the cameras have left for another war. We are living in those moments, in those days, the days after the war. And in a communal sense, the big questions that emerged for American Jewry right after October 7th and over these past 2 years, they're still here with us. We've all changed as individuals and as a community, and yet in some ways we've stayed the same. So in the next hour, we'll try to take a close look at this unique moment in history when it seems like the war is over. Hopefully, it really is over. But the future still feels uncertain. Who are we now, and who do we want to become? And we're very fortunate to explore these questions with Ambassador Dan Shapiro, a diplomat, policy expert, and former U.S. ambassador to Israel, serving under President Barack Obama from 2011 to 2017. He played a central role in strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship, advancing security cooperation, and deepening strategic ties between the two countries. Shalom, Dan.
Shalom.
I think about in all our encounters, yes, feel free. We've usually met on TV when you were the ambassador and I was the news anchor, so it was Ambassador Shapiro. Now that we're here with the mishpuche, is Dan okay?
Dan is great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's start with a question that's philosophical, but at the same time, it's deeply political. What does it mean to be an American Jew today?
Well, I took great inspiration from Sarah Hurwitz's definition of what our people's mission and what our people, our traditions call for today. First of all, thank you to everyone with Z3 for inviting me here, and thank you, Tamar. We were also supposed to be joined by my friend and colleague Jason Greenblatt, whose travel was disrupted, so I'll do my best to cover both sides.
We heard that in the back rows. We heard
and
that.
Maybe that's part of being an American Jew these days, right? Both of those words in that phrase are deeply important. I grew up believing first and foremost that in my family, our Jewish identity, the knowledge of the traditions that Sarah spoke of, the deepening of those connections within our community, locally, nationally, internationally, and obviously with our compatriots in Israel, was at the center of what our responsibility was, how we should live our lives, the teachings, the traditions, the connections to that people of which we are a part. And I also grew up in a family that believed that we were given an enormous gift to be citizens of the greatest democracy in the world, of a country where our freedom and the freedom of all citizens and even non-citizens is guaranteed by our Constitution, by our founding documents, by our founding traditions, by our laws, and that is something else to be cherished and nurtured. And so I believe to be an American Jew today is to hold both of those responsibilities, to hold both of those truths, and to try to work to uphold and further and fulfill what that mission calls for. Of course, we're doing so in a time when Israel has been obviously attacked in the worst possible way on October 7th, the worst attack against Jews since the Holocaust, and has had to fight for its survival and fight for its security and fight to recover its hostages and its citizens. That is something that imposes great responsibility on American Jews to provide support in that struggle, which I think we have done a great deal of, and there's always more to do. We're also living in a period when our own democracy is as divided as I can ever recall in my life, in which we hear tones of discord and tones of even illiberalism and maybe even authoritarian impulses from more than one direction, putting at risk some of those very freedoms that are core to the American experience, and in certain ways that particularly threaten us as Jews, as the voices of anti-Semitism are heard from more than one direction. So those are responsibilities in this moment, but we have a lot to draw on. We have a lot of strengths. Sarah spoke of many of them. And I think we have as many in the American experience as we have in the Jewish experience, and so we should hold to both and work to advance both.
You know that a few months ago, I spoke on my podcast with Dan Ahdoot, and he described the current state of American Jewry as prominent but weak. It has thrived and flourished. American Jews are visible and successful almost in every field in the United States. But he argues that we're not powerful, and October 7th exposed that. Why, he says? We woke up that morning and our allies weren't there, most of them. And even after all the money and the philanthropy and academic excellence, the university that we helped to build, they didn't feel any urgency to protect us on campus as a minority. So he says, he argues, we're prominent but weak. What's your take on Dan's rather provocative observation?
I think he has a basis for that argument, and I also think I'm not as pessimistic as that description would convey. We have still many institutions in this country where our voices are heard, where Jewish citizens are able to take part. That's maybe the prominence he speaks of. It's up to us to be proud and bold and not cowed and not intimidated by voices that might try to attack us or intimidate us or treat Israel as a source of illegitimacy for itself or for us as Jews or as American citizens. So we have a lot of the question about whether we are weak will depend very much on us. There's no doubt that we've heard and seen disturbing, very disturbing things on campuses and in other locations. But it's not everywhere. At the same time as we've heard and seen those types of very discomforting moments by people who treat us as less than full citizens, by people who treat Israel as some sort of source of illegitimacy. We've also, he spoke of allies. We have allies. I know them. I worked with many of them in government. I still work with many of them in politics outside of government. I believe the current administration, with which I disagree on many subjects, is a partner and an ally. And while one can point to 10 or 12 or 20 campuses where there were very, very ugly scenes of protesters attacking Israel and attacking even Jewish students and Jewish faculty, there's dozens more, hundreds more, where that was not happening.
But then that's not news, so we don't see that.
You never see that. You never see that. And there are many places where it might be that a Jewish student will say, this is not the year I'm going to apply to those colleges. I'm not going to name colleges by name. But there are many places where we are welcome, we are still treated as family and as full members of the community. So, but a lot will depend on us, how we position ourselves. Do we treat ourselves as under attack, or do we treat ourselves as full citizens with every right to express ourselves with full pride in our identity, our dual identities, and stand up to the bullies, and then rally our allies to stand with us?
And the war may be over, but many American Jews feel a sense of unease, as if the political aftershocks will keep echoing. And on the left, we now have a new mayor-elect of New York who openly opposes Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. And he hasn't paid any political price for that, maybe even the opposite. And on the right, we've just heard deeply troubling statements from the head of the Heritage Foundation, and more broadly, some very outspoken anti-Semitic people speaking out loud. And do you think that American politics and the place of Jews within it is changing before our eyes on both sides of the aisle?
It's undeniable that we're hearing these tones creeping in from the fringes of both sides of the aisle. It's undeniable. You spoke about the mayor-elect of New York City, who says he will stand with the Jewish community against anti-Semitism, but is blind to the fact that his own statements about Israel's illegitimacy as a Jewish state are in some ways fueling many of those same attitudes toward Jews, and certainly creating a situation where Jewish institutions and even Jewish citizens of that city feel under attack or under duress by people who want to delegitimize their very mission. He's been presented with a list of demands from some of his supporters, a full menu of BDS ways that New York will distance itself from the state of Israel. Let's see what he does. I don't think we know yet, now that he has been elected and holds that office, by a fairly slim margin, frankly, considering he was the Democratic nominee of a heavily Democratic city. There are clearly people, and he should know this, who are uncomfortable with aspects of his program. Let's see, is he more committed to his agenda of affordability? I'm not sure all of his solutions to that are the bright solutions either, but let's see if he's more committed to that or more committed to this very ideological path that certain people among his allies may be pushing him toward. I don't know. Of course, you mentioned on the other side of the aisle, we've seen and heard some very disturbing things from prominent podcasters, prominent commentators, and they clearly have some reach into the base of the Republican Party, of this administration. And it's impossible. We also hear very strong, outspoken statements against that. I'm not often find myself in deep agreement with Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, but I think he's been fantastic in identifying the anti-Semitism in his camp on the right and calling it out and saying it's completely unacceptable. We, again, goes back to the earlier comment. We have allies, and we have plenty of allies in both parties on both sides of the aisle, but we can't allow complacency to set in and say, well, we'll manage those extreme voices in our own camps. No, they have to be called out, and particularly their policies and their ideas have to be combated from within our own political camps. So there's work to do. The same day, I'll speak with my own side, of course, the same day that Mamdani was elected mayor of New York, two governors were elected in New Jersey and Virginia who were from a very different wing of the Democratic Party. Yeah, it's worth acknowledging.
From the mainstream of the Democratic Party.
Very mainstream, very centrist. Neither of them spoke much about Israel during their campaigns, as you'd expect, but their congressional records suggest they're very much in the mainstream of understanding that Israel is a partner, Israel is an ally. No citizen, Jewish or otherwise, should be ostracized or criticized for promoting a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. So I think there's much to work with, even as I recognize there's responsibilities, just as Senator Cruz has taken on, there's responsibilities on my side to make sure that that is the predominant strain. Even if we have disagreements with Israel, criticism of Israeli policy, always legitimate, but not to the extent of delegitimization and anti-Semitism.
As you mentioned, Jason Greenblatt was supposed to join us, and he's not here, but we had a great prep conversation that unfortunately you all missed. And what I want to mention from that was really fascinating for me to hear is the moment in which he said how much shared grounds he found with you in conversations you had, and how important that was from him, that when it comes to Israel and to the Jewish community, there's a lot of views that the both of you can share, and obviously you agreed with him, so he's not here with us today to discuss it, but could you talk a bit about that, because I think that's so important to pause on in these days.
Yeah, Jason and I spoke together on a panel with the American Jewish Committee at the UN General Assembly just about 5-6 weeks ago. And the subject was, as the war seems to be ending, the deal had not actually been struck yet, but there was momentum toward it. Can we get back on the road toward building out the Abraham Accords, towards expanding the regional integration, towards helping Israel and the moderate Arab states, all U.S. partners, deepen their coalition and take advantage of this moment when the Iranian axis is as weak as it's ever been, and really try to move in that direction. And while he pursued that work and successfully, and I gave him great credit for it, and his colleagues during the first Trump administration, which I was not a fan of on many issues, and I continued to do work on that during the Biden administration, which I'm sure he and many of his colleagues were not a fan of. It was he who said, you know, the Venn diagram between us has about 80 or 90% overlap, and there are differences at the margins, and you know, we should hold to our differences as well. But that agenda of seeing Israel as a critical component of U.S. national security interests. Just imagine if the United States and Israel drifted apart, as some call for, and some call for on both sides of the aisle, and the U.S. security commitment to Israel was no longer what it was, and what we, in my time as ambassador, helped to advance with a $38 billion memorandum of understanding, and what other administrations have done as well. Just imagine if other countries in the region, both our friends and our adversaries, start to see us drift apart. What will happen? The adversaries will gain strength and encouragement. They will continue their effort already underway to rebuild and become sources of attack and violence and aggression in the region and beyond the region. Our friends, the Arab moderate states, will say, well, you know, if the United States is not standing with its closest ally, then what do we need from these normalization agreements? What do we need from this coalition? We will start to hedge. We will look for opportunities to work with various partners. We'll cut our own de-escalation agreements with Iran. We'll figure out how to work with Russia and China. Egypt and Jordan, if Israel is not at the core of the U.S. policy, are not going to be very popular recipients of U.S. assistance. Egypt and Jordan will be destabilized or turn also to Russia and China. The moment that the United States and Israel drift apart, this is apart from the moral interest, very profound moral interest the United States has to stand with Israel. But on the strategic interest, the moment we drift apart is the moment our influence and our interests in the Middle East decline dramatically. So what's the alternative? The alternative is A, ensuring Israel always has the right and ability to defend itself, especially when we've seen the kinds of attacks it suffered, first from Hamas, then from Hezbollah, then from the Houthis, then from Iran. And standing with Israel as it fights to defend itself against all of those adversaries, as we did during the Biden and during the Trump administrations in different ways. That's the first thing. And the second thing is to say we have a huge opportunity, just a massive opportunity, to take the progress that was arrested during the war after October 7th, but that had begun with the Abraham Accords, with the Negev Forum, with the opportunities for Israelis and Arabs all across the region to build partnerships in energy and water and tourism and health and defense and agriculture and all sorts of technology. And on people-to-people level, the thing that will really give Arab leaders confidence that this is something that serves not only their country's interests, but even their political interests, that they can survive it. To take advantage of this moment when all of those countries, U.S. partners all, are aligned and see that pathway open, and take advantage of this moment when Iran and its partners and allies are as weak as they've ever been, and drive that forward. If President Trump and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and whoever else is working on that team are successful in that, I will give them 100% support and full credit. If another administration carries that forward 3 years from now, I hope and expect that Jason Greenblatt and his friends would also support what we're doing. So that is that's the 90% overlap in that Venn diagram.
You're describing the 90%, and from knowing both of you, I can say that I think that you can share these views because both of you are on the one side deeply ideological, but at the same time you're moderate. But we're living in times of extremism in politics, and it's true to the US, it's true to Israel, it's true to the whole world right now. And that really raises the question in the past 2 years about the tent. Who's inside the tent and who's outside the tent? What do we tolerize as a Jewish community, and what do we don't, and we say this is the red line? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, obviously, anti-Semitism for principled and for, you might say, more practical reasons is unacceptable. And anti-Semitism has to be understood, I think, broadly. Obviously, it is the attacks on Jewish people or attacks on the rights or the ability of Jewish people to fully participate in society, to be safe, to be proud, to be public about their identification. That, of course, is out of bounds. But the kind of anti-Zionism that suggests that the Jewish people, almost in a singular way, are ineligible for self-determination in their historic homeland. Even if you disagree with certain policies or certain leaders of the Israeli government, that is not the issue. The issue is the legitimacy of that state to exist, because you somehow define the Jewish people as uniquely ineligible for that. That is also anti-Semitism. And again, we hear those voices from more than one direction in the political discussion these days. It's the responsibility of our own community of political leaders within our respective sides of the aisle to identify that and call it out. There are, as I said, there are legitimate things one can say about Israeli policy, and there are legitimate criticisms of Israeli leaders. I mean, we hear about them from Israelis more than we hear about them from almost anybody else. And so there's no reason one can't have an open and honest discussion about where those differences occur. I was in Israel for most of August and September. It was before the big breakthrough on the hostage deal, and I heard dramatically, I'd say angry, bitter comments from so many Israeli friends. And I would go to Hostage Square, and I would hear deep dissatisfaction about the Israeli leadership and about Israeli policy choices. So it's legitimate to have that conversation, but you've got to draw the line between those types of policy differences and a fundamental attack on the legitimacy of a Jewish state in any borders.
And we should sure applaud for that. But the last few weeks have tested both parties and their leadership. And I'll really just take two examples, but there's many of them. On the right, we saw Tucker Carlson's interview, and afterwards, the Heritage presidents saying, and we didn't see all Republican leaders criticize and really call that out. And on the other hand, we read about a phone call that President Obama had done to Mamdani. Actually, that was the second call, in which he praised the campaign as well. And that, anyway, if we have these extremes, but we don't have the politicians that will, stand up and say, I will not tolerate that, where are we heading? And just personally, because when I have deep appreciation to all American presidents as an Israeli, Republicans, Democrats, when I heard about that conversation of President Obama, I had this kvetch in the stomach.
Yeah. So I obviously don't know what took place on that phone call. Was not on it, not in any kind of regular touch with President Obama. Here's what I can say. The lines that I described earlier about delegitimizing Israel's very existence or the very notion of a Jewish state as a legitimate expression of the self-determination of the Jewish people, to me is a red line. So I would hope that any leader, President Obama or any other leader in our party, speaking to Mr. Mamdani, would make clear that that is a position that will put him well outside the mainstream. I've noticed how several prominent New York politicians did not endorse him or endorsed him very late and very quietly and in a perfunctory way, as if to say, this is not us, and we're signaling we're going to keep at arm's length at best something that we find deeply troubling and deeply offensive. Now, there are things to learn even from a campaign like his, which included these very disturbing attitudes. his energy, his motivation of young people, his focus on affordability. Again, I'm not sure the solutions he applies from his democratic socialist agenda are the right solutions to that, but it at least speaks to something that we know motivated also the campaigns of Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger, that is the main issue on the agenda. So there may be something to learn, how to communicate, what to communicate about from the campaign, and it's possible that seasoned leaders can help elicit the lessons from that type of campaign and also provide guidance to steer away from the extremism that is also part of the agenda and also, has to be said, part of his base, part of his coalition. There were all sorts of strange things about this campaign, including the the terrible alternatives to vote for. I think had I been a New York citizen of the state of New York, of the city of New York, I probably would have held my nose and voted for one of the alternatives, but I would have really had to hold my nose. And so there's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't extrapolate too much from a mayoral candidate winning just about 50% in a very democratic city with very unique demography that doesn't replicate itself all over the country, and certainly not in the swing states and districts that are likely to determine, which party controls future Congresses or future administrations. So there's a lot that we shouldn't over-extrapolate from that. But having that open line to say, let's build on the positives and let's push to the margins the negatives is something worth thinking about. What I know about President Obama from the time I served with him, again, not about this conversation, was that he, under his instructions, we negotiated a $38 billion 10-year memorandum of understanding to ensure Israel had the means to defend itself for a decade, that he approved Israel's acquisition of the F-35 aircraft, that he provided the first funding for Iron Dome, and then for David Sling, and then for the Arrow systems that have saved so many lives over this year, that he ensured that our intelligence sharing and that our joint training of our militaries accelerated and expanded well beyond what they had been when he took office, and they continued on beyond that under the next two administrations, now three administrations. So if he is bringing to those conversations his record, his history, his understanding about how that reflects both American values and interests, that could be a positive for a young, early in his career mayor to hear that maybe one of the heroes of the party from an earlier era has something to teach me as well. So I hope that will be the case, and I will certainly watch for that to be the case.
Okay. We live in an era of depolarization, and obviously it seeps into the Jewish community too. How do you see polarization playing out within our community, and can we overcome it, or as long as polarization is out there within the whole American society, eventually it will seep into the Jewish community as well?
Yeah, we're not immune from those broader societal trends. I mean, all of us are now captive to the way information is expressed and projected and consumed on social media and on our phones, with built-in mechanisms and algorithms to deepen the polarization, to make you mad, to reinforce your own strongly held views again and again, to exclude and denigrate the views of others. So that, of course, seeps into our own internal Jewish community conversation. It also is part of how we exist as Jews in the broader society, and we can't be blind to that. Again, I take great wisdom from Sarah's remarks that even though it is our Jewish tradition to fight and to argue and to disagree, and it's all in the Talmud, the way the rabbis struggled over every question, and there was always a Hillel and always a Shammai, and always different perspectives on the same question, and sometimes even competing truths that you have to find a way to hold. The fact that you hold a stone in one pocket that says, "I am but dust and ashes," and another stone that says, "But for me the world was created." The fact that we have to know how to be focused on our own Jewish community survival and thriving and carrying forward our traditions, and how we exist in that broader society. that to me should pull us closer together, should help us resist the most extreme voices in our own community and in the broader society as well. It's not always easy. We're all human. We're all subject to the emotions of those pulls. But that is a responsibility, and that is also consistent with the Jewish tradition.
Let's add a layer to our opening question. What does it mean to be an American Jew today? What does it mean to be a friend of Israel today as an American Jew?
Well, I start with the fundamentals, which we've spoken about. Israel is the fulfillment of centuries, even millennia, of Jewish longing to have a homeland or a sovereignty in our historic homeland. And it goes to the Bible, it goes to our liturgy, it goes to the centuries of exile, and it's an expression of something not only that we've dreamed of and longed for, but that history shows very clearly what happens when you don't have it. The tragedies of thousands of years of Jewish exile, there was beauty in that history as well, but many tragedies, many pogroms, many attacks, and of course a Shoah, the ultimate expression of that. And so the need to have the need and the legitimacy of that homeland in that place where Jews are always safe and always can determine their own future, to me is a baseline. If you don't believe in that, it's hard to say you're a friend of Israel, for sure. Now, if you believe that, then you can have, as Israelis do, very profound debates about Israeli policy on the Palestinian issue, on how the war in Gaza was conducted, on how the approach to recovering hostages was prioritized, on what happens in the West Bank, on the building of settlements, on internal questions about judicial reforms and the separation of powers among different parts of the Israeli government, on Israel's approach to other neighbors that have attacked it and how it defends itself and how it positions itself against those threats as well. There's room to debate all of it. And again, you only have to go and sit in a cafe in Tel Aviv to know that Israelis who fight and bleed and die for their country are prepared to have those debates and come to very different conclusions. So I don't think there's much that can be excluded from what friends of Israel can say and discuss and argue and think about. But it does start with that fundamental. Do you support Israel's existence and legitimacy? Do you support Israel's ability to defend itself? Do you recognize that the United States benefits? This is not a one-way altruistic kind of relationship.
Not philanthropy.
It's not philanthropy. That's absolutely right. If the United States did not have in Israel, and this is something President Biden said many, many times before and while he was president, we'd sort of have to invent it for the way our interests are advanced in the region and even broadly because of that, and the sharing of technology and intelligence and training. Now, we have had big differences, and of course many people in the United States are legitimately concerned about the toll on Palestinian civilians in Gaza. It's legitimate. I argue that the party mainly responsible for that is Hamas, which has prioritized its ideological crusade to destroy the state of Israel, to kill Jews over the well-being of its own people. I was the first American official ever to go into a Hamas tunnel, an attack tunnel that was dug under the border in 2013. And to see in this miserable, dark, cold, buried place what someone would do to drag dirt a kilometer back into Gaza and drag cement a kilometer under Israel just so that they would have the opportunity to fulfill that mission to attack Israel, that's the organization that has subjected the people of Gaza to, and then fought within them and used them as human shields more than any other actor. Just as the Iranian regime has squandered probably close to $1 trillion of resources while it has armed proxies that could pose threats and actually attack Israel, while it has pursued a nuclear weapons program intended to be able to fulfill its vision, its ideological crusade of destroying Israel. So we have to understand that is the region Israel lives in. Those are the adversaries it faces. But it doesn't mean a friend of Israel can't also say, I am concerned. And this is something we did to say in the Biden administration, I think unquestionably a friend of Israel, that how one fights those enemies, how one takes care to minimize to the maximum extent possible that civilians who are innocent are not caught in that crossfire, that the maximum amount of humanitarian assistance can reach those people so that their needs are met, because their own leaders will never care for them. But there is a moral obligation on our side, American side, Israel's side, to try to do that. Those are very legitimate conversations to have well within the tent of friends of Israel.
As long as constructive criticism and loving criticism. Last question. What do you want this wonderful audience of ours today, about to go into a full day of panels and discussions, often hearing things they disagree with, to take from our conversation?
First of all, it's a remarkable gathering. This is my second time at Z3. First was several years ago, and to see the growth and the flowering of this model, what it does for this community here in Palo Alto, but what is now being exported to many, many other JCCs around the country is inspiring. I would ask this wonderful audience to come out of today feeling enormous pride, in pride as Jews, pride as Zionists, pride as Americans, where we can give expression to those other aspects of our personalities and our traditions and our ideology. And to know that, sort of where we started, Tamar, that the most critical determination about whether we will be prominent and weak or prominent and strong is ourselves. And having that pride and not being intimidated and gathering our partners and allies and educating ourselves and educating our younger generation, who, if they only hear what they hear on social media, will not know the depth and the breadth and the nuance of everything that is part of Jewish history, Israeli history, politics in the Middle East, the relationship between the United States and Israel. Those are obligations we take on, but if we take them on, and if we take them on proudly and strongly, I'm very confident in this country. I'm very confident that this country will find its way to its best self, to its best traditions, to the most open, the most welcoming, the most, maybe in some ways the safest place, certainly outside of Israel, that Jews have ever lived. And it can and should and always will be that if we take the lead and do the education internally and externally to help make sure it is so. So I hope our wonderful audience will leave with that task and that purpose.
Amen for that. Thank you very much, Ambassador Shapiro, and thank you